is not good is size. Yeah, now I want to clarify one question about the input tax carry. Suppose I purchase a good compiled by paying 100 rupees. So actual price of the good is 100 rupees and say tax rate percent. And while is selling me the price, the market price is 110 rupees to me. And I am selling that good to Somia, say 130 rupees. So what is my value addition? So my value addition is 20 rupees. So when I am selling to Somia that good to 130 rupees, I will collect the tax from Somia 13 rupees at 10% tax rate. But see, I am not going to pay the government the 13 rupees altogether. What I will pay only the 3 rupees because I will claim this 10 rupees as input tax carry because that I have already paid to file. So this system is called the input tax carry. So the value added tax system, the tax liability lies with my value addition. What every point of the value addition, whatever be my value addition on that, I will pay the tax. I think it is clear.
So can we just address some of the institutional aspects of GST? How prepared is India for basically at the state level and at the central level to kind of introduce this tax?
Yes.
Without kind of disparity.
The question is that after saying the design and structure of that, let me take 1 or 2 minutes of on basic design and structure of GST. So what are the taxes that will be subsumed under GST? So on the state government side, a basket of taxes will be subsumed under GST, and for the central government side, some taxes will be subsumed under GST. So what are the importance of these taxes for financing of the central government and state government? That I think you can find in my paper that has been already distributed to all of you. But I want to point out that these taxes, there are several of taxes that we are subsuming under the GST, like the state sales tax, state VAT, state entertainment tax, luxury tax, then NT tax, CST, these taxes. And the structure of indirect taxes have lots of cascading. So I want to point out that what kind of cascading system we are having at present, because we cannot appreciate that the GST structure and design if we don't understand the cascading. So when the goods move from one state to another state, so say Maharashtra is selling some good to West Bengal, so the goods will attract the tax that is called the central sales tax. Central sales tax is a central tax, is levied by the central government but collected and retained by the state government. So central sales tax at present date is 2%. So if it is a B2B transactions like business to business transaction, the origin state retain the 2% tax and sell the good to the destination state. When the goods come to the destination state, some states have NT tax, and different varieties of NT tax system is prevailing at present. So some states have a specific commodity specific NT tax, and some states have the across the board NT tax. Take example of West Bengal have a specific, or some states have a specific commodity wise, like Himachal has a specific commodity wise NT tax. But some states like Assam have general NT tax. All the goods that is moving to my state, or not the B2B, not for B2C transaction, not for consumption, but for the business purposes, there will be an NT tax. So what I am paying the CST, price plus CST. On top, I am collecting the NT tax. And some states, when it is further sold, they will collect the VAT on top. So some states give the input tax credit against the NT tax. Some states don't give the input tax credit against the NT tax. So there is a common system is working now. So right now, and what happened when the origin state collect the CST, they are not going to give. They are not giving the full input tax credit on CST sales. Okay. Now I hope all of you are purchasing through e-commerce. If you see the e-commerce that receipt, you will find that that is the CST sales. Most of the cases is the CST sales, and they collect the CST tax rate, say 12.5%, 13.5%, 14.5%, and like. Because this is a B2C transaction, business to consumer transaction. In that case, the CST rate will be the prevailing, the state prevailing, the origin state prevailing at. So after the GST comes, there will be no such CST or NT tax, and this breaking down of chain, because the lots of input taxes are not passed through because of this kind of taxes, that is not going to have, because we will have the integrated GST system. Integrated GST system will be a packet of tax that will be comprising of both state taxes as central taxes, and it will be parceled out to the destination state, and to the destination state will give the input tax credit to the dealers when they claim the input tax credit, and this the credit chains won't break. Okay. Having said that, I want to also add another one or two points. Let's take example of luxury tax. All the hotels, restaurants, mostly the hotels, they pay the luxury tax, but against the luxury tax, they cannot claim the input tax credit. Like entertainment tax. Entertainment tax, whenever we go to the theater hall to see the movies, they pay the entertainment tax. And against they cannot claim any kind of input tax credit. But when the GST will come, then they will claim the input tax credit. Similarly, the service tax also. Okay. So having said that, now the preparedness of the GST. What will be the institutional preparedness for GST? As far as I know, that GST model build is already in the public domain, and different quarters, the different stakeholders are now discussing on intricacies of the GST bill. Second thing is that after this GST amendment bill is passed, now it will be ratified by the state governments. Already Assam has ratified, Bihar is in the process of ratification, Delhi government is also in the process of ratification. So at least we need 15 to 16 states to be ratified. Then it will again then it will go to for the president for his final signature, and then the GST bill will be introduced into the parliament, and then that process will go on. Apart from that, the institutional preparedness, what is going on, as far as I know, the GSTN, that is the platform, the IT platform, and that will be the backbone of GST administration. That is in the final stage, almost they are working on some kind of matching of data, like invoice based, because you know that when the GST comes, we have to the dealers have to submit the returns on invoice-wise return they have to submit. So they are working on the matching of invoiced based transactions and that. And there are lots of people are working on other kind of issues like the GST training program. There's a coordinated training program is going on with the state government, state commercial tax department, CBEC, Central Board of Excise and Customs, and NASEN, their academy for training and teaching. They together they are teaching different master trainers in different states. Apart from that, there are lots of work is going on IT infrastructure and also the GST preparedness and that kind of issue. Having said that, what I want to raise one or 2 points, that success of the GST will depend on 2-3 issues. One is the tax compliance, that's a very, very important aspect, and the tax administration. The administration, if it is administratively easy for doing the GST, then the success will be very high. And the third thing is basically the model GST bill and that kind of thing. So, and the efficiency will be function of both rules and regulation and tax compliance.
So one question, when you talk about the informal sector, So informal sector is presently not in any of the tax brackets. So what kind of impact would that have on GST? Because large population, especially if you look at the agriculture and the informal labor, they are not taxed. So what implication does it have on?
No, see, informal labor is a completely different issue. Informal labor and the tax on the wage or salary that comes under direct tax. But for other kind of issues, informal businesses like the enterprises, unorganized sector, how that will be taxed under GST. Before saying that, I want to raise one issue of broad public finance and fiscal policy issues. If you remember that there was a time people were talking about the direct tax code and direct tax code. And we are all thinking that our direct tax liability will go down, and then everything stop, everything. Now we are not discussing the direct tax code. But I think that there is a point of thinking about the implementation of direct tax code along with the GST, because if anywhere the GST tax liability goes up for the common people, so there will be some kind of benefit they will get from the direct tax code. And the signal that government should give and the government should think of giving that when there will be incentives into the system, when you earn or you do get the income, we tax less. But when you go to the market and purchase goods and services, we tax more. That is the signal government wants to give. I think so. But that is not going to happen right now. And second thing of informal sector, because now the threshold, but why informal sector is not under the VAT system? Because the threshold, because their turnover is below the threshold. Now most of the states now have a threshold of 5 to 10 lakh threshold under that. Most of these businesses fall, their turnover is below that threshold. Even if their threshold is higher than the VAT turnover, they are not going to come and register under the VAT because the thing is that there are lots of rigidities or lots of informalities in our input market. Our labor market, there are informalities. Our capital market, there are informalities. In our asset market, like the land or machineries or like that, there are lots of informalities. Given this constants of informality, how could we expect that informal sector will come under any taxation system? But slowly, I think we have to get rid of this informality into the input market so that they should come to our taxation system. And I don't see any point, I don't see any specific policy instrument or anything under the GST system also that for that they will come under the in our GST on the VAT tax name. So I don't see any signal.
So just I think in the beginning of meeting we were discussing a little bit about the GST bill and whether it is litigation proof. So we would a little bit like to comment on that.
Because yeah. This issue is that if you see the GST basically model GST, there are concerns. There are lots of concerns from different stakeholders and different discussion forums discussing different aspects of this model GST. But I'm not a legal expert on that, and I have very limited understanding about the legalities, acts, and rules and that. But as an economist and as a researcher, what I think is that a simple GST bill and with the simplified GST structure, the GST bill, which is easy to comply, will be accepted. Because if the model GST bill is prone to litigation, is prone to lots of interpretation, different interpretation, then we are not going to improve our tax compliance. It will be full of litigations, and given the structure of our GST, that dual control and multiple tax rate, there will be also the thresholds issue, there will be exemptions, and there are lots of issues that will pop up in coming days. So my only submission is that a simplified GST bill, which is not litigation prone, will be acceptable. And second thing is that I want to mention is that GST, and we have a long tradition. Basically, last 50 years of we have lots of litigation and lots of verdict, both in Supreme Court, High Court, and that thing. We have to take stock of those litigations, what we have understood, what the knowledge we have gained from those kind of litigation, and we have to build it. We have to build those things in our new GST bill so that we should not face those kind of litigation again when the GST come into force.
Thank you. So that is a very nice public policy perspective of especially the implementation aspect of GST. So there is one question somebody is asking. It's how, this is by Nitin, how GST will stop black market. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, there are 2-3 signals that I want to pass on to all of you. It is given into the GST amendment bill and also into the GST. If you see the discussion paper on GST registration, return, and payment, and all these things. So one thing is that now the dealers have to file the return every month invoice-wise. Okay. So when the government and the policymakers are thinking when they file the return invoice-wise, so that will be enough for us or the tax administration to catch any kind of generation or absorption of the unaccounted income. But frankly speaking, that is not going to happen, because there is always a probability of collusion between the sellers and the consumers not to report the transactions. How that could happen? Because right now my behavior is that whenever my tax part I see in my invoice, I always avoid to pay the tax. So now my visibility of tax part in my invoice will be much higher, because right now I can see the central excise part in my invoice, because that is subtle or that is implicit in my invoice, but it will be explicit. So when I see one CGST and one SGST in my invoice, what will be my behavior as a consumer? Whether I will pay the tax or I will have a negotiation with my sellers not to report the transaction and pay in tax, or any other, even that kind of issues will be still there under the GST. Second thing is that people say that if we go towards cashless transactions, or unaccounted income will go down. But see, even if the cash and non-cash transactions, if my information network, my information capturing, processing my information, and my tax administration, deterrence into the system is not there, we are not going to get rid of this unaccounted business, unaccounted activities. The second thing is this, and the third thing is that incentive to the consumer to reveal my transactions. I appreciate that the government of Delhi has initiated the invoice updation, and they are giving some kind of prize or some kind of incentive to the consumers to upload their invoice to the DTAX system. I think the government, both the central and state government, should roll out a strict program to give incentive to the consumers to reveal their transactions, and it will be a cooperative tax administration. Tax administration cannot work in silos without interacting with the consumers and the banks and the payment channels like the Paytm and other kinds of payment systems are now every day we are inventing. So how will we regulate them, and how we can understand what kind of transaction is going on in those kind of platforms? That is very important. And second thing is that we want to get rid of unaccounted income we have to keep, we have to get all the informal activity, informal purchase, informal production, and informal consumption. The local purchase, local production, local consumption, we have to get rid of that.
So there is one very interesting question by Tanmay Srivastava. He's asking primarily about some of the negative list items in the negative list, including the reason for not including petroleum products, entertainment tax, panchayati, collected by panchayat, and stamp duty. So what
No, no, no. Entertainment tax will be under the GST system. And negative list, if you see the negative list, what are the services? Is that negative list is the services has been pointed out is the medical, institutional medical, then education, institutional education. Then we have other like the PGT, the passenger and goods tax kind of thing. The service provided by the transport is both the goods movement and that. But frankly speaking, those are the negative.
Hi, guys, is it possible to hear me right now? Okay, great. So we will continue. There was some problem. We got disconnected. So we will just continue with, we were talking about the negative list, and there was a question on why petroleum products are excluded. So Dr. Mukherjee will continue with the discussion.
Sorry for the exception. And the question is that how we go about the negative list issues. The negative list, if you see the list of items, it is not that all the services that are listed in the negative list is being taxed. It's taxed by the state government. It is taxed by the state government because states, take example of the passenger and good tax, take example of the other taxes, entertainment tax or betting tax and like that, luxury tax and that kind of taxes. Because it is kept in the negative list, that means central government doesn't tax those items, but it taxed by the state government. Except few items like the education, institutional education, medical and health kind of issues, those will be, I expect that those services will be kept under the exemption list, even in the GST system. On issues related to petroleum and that thing, yes, what is important is that it's not much more of petroleum kind of taxes, but electricity. If we keep out of electricity from the GST system, the entire cascading will go on. So I have shown in one of my papers, it has been published in NIPFP, you can see the link, you can have a look, that the benefit that we are talking about from the GST would be somehow less if we don't include the petroleum products under the GST system. But if we take experience of other countries, how they have gone in taxing the petroleum products even into the GST regime, so they have a GST system, but on top of the GST system, they have excise levy. That is called the green tax or eco tax or that kind of taxes. That is the regulatory levy as a pure excise tax on top of GST. So, having said that, we may have to think of some kind of arrangement as we take these items under GST system. So I think that at least the manufacturing stage should get rid of any kind of unpaid input tax from the petroleum sector, and we pass all the taxes and duties and such to the consumers. Because unless the consumers bear the cost, we are not going to take the actions. Because now the pollution, the air pollution in every city, everywhere, is a major health problem. Okay? So unless I pay from my pocket of running my car, I cannot understand what is the actual price or actual value we put in basically how much pollution I am doing for the environment.
So one question on the tax rate. So we have a tax rate, the gross tax rate of 18% right now. So what is your view on and having a which that different tax rates
Just see, the first point I want to make about the tax rate is that tax rate in any taxation system is inversely proportional to tax efficiency. So, and tax efficiency is a function of tax compliance. Again, I am repeating that point because we don't need very high GST tax rates if we could assure that our tax efficiency will go up, if we could assure that our tax compliance will go up, because we cannot say that our business as usual or we will go the status quo in our tax efficiency and tax administration and we will reduce our tax rate. That is not going to happen. Frankly speaking, our the public expenditure, the demand for public expenditure is going up and our fiscal space is going down. So to meet this public expenditure, we need the revenue. And how the government will get the revenue if tax rate is not increased? Second thing is that we don't need to increase the tax rate if our tax compliance is very high, tax leakages are low, and our tax administration is very high. And second thing is that this 18% tax rate, I don't know how this number came, because we haven't decided, or the GST Council will decide what will be our GST RNR. This 18% tax rate and that issue, this I don't understand how people are talking about 18%.
So there is one question on if GST is to be collected across value chain by center and states, how is it called destination-based tax? This is by
This is a very good question. This is a very good question that because you know the present taxation system is called the origin-based tax system. So origin-based taxation I have already discussed. I am again repeating this point that when the goods are moving from the manufacturing state to consuming state. Take another example. One car is moving from Maharashtra to, let's say, Bihar. So origin state collects the CST, the central sales tax. But the destination state don't get the share of that CST because ideally that share should go to the consuming state. So destination state, now all the taxes that is collected from any goods or services will go to the state where consumption takes place. That is called the destination based tax. I think you are fine with my answer. Would not please
I think that it's just one way. So, Dr. Mukherjee, can you brief us about GST as an indirect tax, a similar tax in other countries, and maybe raw panels, success in a different country because it's not being so successful.
There are two issues. People say that unless and until we have a very ideal system of GST, we should not go and implement that. I differ from that. I say that whatever GST structure, we should go and introduce the GST, and whatever the faults, whatever the difficulties, we should get rid of those difficulties over the years, because it is not that we can just roll out a perfect ideal GST in one day. It's not possible for such a vast country. And Indian GST is a unique GST because we have so much of complexities, the dual tax structure, because income taxes, state taxes, then we have the multiple taxes to be subsumed under tax system. We have multiple tax administration, the central tax administration and the state tax administration. So first of all, Indian GST is not comparable with any other GST. Timeless question. But taking cue from other countries' experience, I want to point out that there is a point of thinking of doing the or administering the GST in some different way. We could merge, or we could have a harmonized tax administration of some kind of activities. Say, take example of we are already talking about the GST registration, return filing, payment into the GST and platform. We also have to think of further downstream of the activities like the assessment, or take example of scrutiny, assessment, and that thing audit, joint audit. And why not have a joint tribunal? Because the tribunal that we are talking about now, that will be a separate tribunal or not, that is we don't know. We could have a joint tribunal, joint tax administration to the point possible. And the last thing is that we need the information. It will be an automatic exchange of information of the three taxes that is required. The three tax system is the CBDT, our direct taxes, CBDC, our indirect taxes handled by the central government, and also the state taxes. These three tax systems should interact in real time, and information. An exchange of information should happen on real time basis and automatic. Then we could have a perfect platform for implementation of GST.
So we have a very interesting question by Kamini. She's asking, wouldn't GST apply repeatedly in case the product is manufactured in one state and all its components sourced from other states? And in this case, how would it support policies like schemes like Make in India and other localization efforts?
No, I want to put this question in different way, because if I have to ask this question, I will ask this question in this way. These are two questions. One is that when we are talking of every stage taxation, another participant also asked this question, and we are talking about the destination-based tax system. You can see all the taxes that we have to pay is on value addition. So my tax liability, if I am a ancillary industry, I have a say parts, and I am supplying the motor parts to some car company. So my tax liability is only on the basis of my value addition. All the taxes that I pay before that by input taxes, that I will get as an input tax credit, and all the downstream of my companies. Whatever the tax I pass on to them, they will get the input tax credit. Ultimately, it's like you are now watching the Olympics, it's like a relay race. So I pass the tax to Payal pass on to the Somya, and Somya pass on to the consumers. So I add the tax, whatever the tax I pay on my value addition, and then pass on to the next person in my chain. So all the taxes ultimately will be passed on to the consumers. There is no point of blocking or tax cascading or not allowing the input tax credit like that. So that is point is clear. The second point is that the Make in India. So unless we have a level playing field of domestic manufacturing come importers, at present the imports, all the imports are subsidized. I have no point to say that, because there are lots of tax cascading in our own manufacturing, because petroleum taxes, like electricity duties, like if they purchase from the say exempted sectors like the agriculture sector, if they purchase from the informal sectors, those cascading is built on to our manufacturing. If I add up all the taxes, all the cascading, that won't be less than, that will be less than our import duty, the countervailing duty, or the basic custom duty that we levy on any manufacturing good that we do. So we have to get rid of this kind of cascading and have a level playing field with manufacturers, domestic manufacturers versus the importers. then we could talk about the manufacturing in India or make in India. The make in India will happen through three. There are three distinct signals for Make in India. One is that removal of cascading of interstate transaction tax, like GST, NT tax is only there. So there are lots of transaction costs of setting up the say warehouses or business distributors or dealers network and that kind of thing. I don't need to have 29 dealership or authorized dealership for doing my business. I can manufacture anywhere in India. I can do business from that place. I don't need to have to maintain this distribution. Second thing will happen is that as we remove the cascading, as I told that by removing these definitional differences between goods and services and manufacturing and distribution, there will be lots of removal of cascading. So there will be incentive for me to invest in demand will go up, and I will face a so I will face a market which is pan India. So my demand for my goods will go up. If I am competitive enough, I'll gather the demand and I'll go up. And there will be high competition in the market. Frankly speaking, if I remove all this tax cascading and that thing, there will be my capacity to absorb the volatility in my cost structure, my input cost side will go up. I could absorb any kind of volatility in my input cost side and give a constant price regime to my consumers. I always give this example. Take example in 2008-9 and after the recession time, there's a huge inflation in the cost, the input cost inflation. But if you see the prices, most of the goods prices didn't go up. What they did is that they reduced the size of the packet. They reduced by 25% or 50%, the small the size, but they kept the price constant. But what happened after this recession is over, they didn't change the price. They give the 25% or 50% extra. So that thing will happen. So, and there will be competition. So if I don't pass on the benefits of cascading removal to my consumers, there will be some person who will be there to get into the market and manufacture the goods, and they will sell. They will sell all over pan India. So there will be competition, and I have to pass on the benefits of cascading tax removal to the consumers.
So one question: GST actually increase the revenue collected on the government? Will it have any kind of impact?
No, I don't think so, because we are talking about the revenue neutrality. Revenue neutrality is that whatever the taxes we are collecting will be collected that tax in the GST. We are not talking about but the one thing could happen that if the compliance improves, if my tax administration efficiency improves, if GDP growth improves, these are all lots of uncertainties here. If then buoyancy will improve, my tax collection will improve, and automatically my tax collection will improve. But there are lots of ifs, there are lots of buts, and there are lots of assumptions. We cannot say this improvement will happen overnight. Today I introduce the GST, tomorrow my GDP will grow by 1 or 2%. Tomorrow my tax efficiency will go up by 90%. Or my tax compliance will improve. It's not going to happen. It will take at least 2 to 3 years to the environment to settle.
So I think with this we will probably close the session.
I can take 1 or 2 questions.
We had it says, okay, what is one question line of it? It says that tax addition on every stage would make consumer more burdensome.
No.
How the consumer would be benefited?
No. Basically, the tax is not adding up. So if you consider the value addition, what is value addition? We have to understand what is value addition. Value addition is basically the if you take out the input cost, all the input cost from your value of output, your value addition. So all the tax that we are talking about is the tax on value addition. So value addition will vary across the sectors, across the activities. So manufacturing, of course, the value addition is high. Services, the value addition is lower. So we cannot say that my tax liability will go up, because we are talking about the revenue neutrality. So that's why we are not going to, you are not going to have your tax liability go up. But one thing I want to mention, that we are paying more taxes on consumption of manufacturing goods, right? We have central excise duty, on top we have the state tax, and we are paying less tax on services. We have only 15% tax, that is the central tax. But in the GST regime, what will happen? Our tax on manufacturing will go down, our tax on services will go up. So what will be the incidence of these changes? So if my consumption basket constitutes of much more of services activities or services, then my tax liability will go up, definitely. But if my consumption basket is less of manufacturing and more of manufacturing and exempted goods, like the rice and wheat, or the fresh foods and vegetables, meats, chickens, eggs, all the fresh items which are not taxed or exempted, then my tax liability will go down, right? So tax liability and incidence analysis, and people are talking about that indirect taxes or the taxes of like GST kind of tax is a regressive tax. Whatever the little research we have done in our institute, I can say that it's not regressive. GST is not regressive, frankly speaking, and it will be progressive, and the tax liability will be higher for the urban people, urban rich people, as compared to rural rich people. As compared to rural poor, urban poor will pay more taxes, but it will be a progressive tax. So it's not that thing is people. And another point I want to mention, that lots of people are talking about the fiscal autonomy of the state. But frankly speaking, that it's an equal tax of the central government and state government. 53% of the tax, that the basket of GST share is 53% is the state taxes, and 46 to 47% is the tax of the center. If anything happened into that basket, you have to be at the bottom. It is not that the fiscal autonomy or central government is encroaching about the fiscal autonomy of the state. No.
So there is one very interesting question. The name is not given, but what about cesses? Is cess also going to be subsidized?
All be subsidized. According to the GST, if you see the GST discussion paper, I want to mention about the discussion paper of the first import committee. There they mentioned that all the cesses and surcharges will be subsidized. But if there is need for any calamities or if there is any calamities, if there is any calamities or any specific kind of fund required. But then in that case the cesses. But I think this cesses and surcharge business itself is not very progressive, or it's not very transparent tax system. And in a system when we are going to have in the GST system, it should not have any kind of cesses, surcharges, levies kind of business.
Okay, but how will the government meet important needs of, for say, for Swachh Bharat, for road development?
You spend from your budgetary. You spend for your budgetary space. You discuss whatever the budgetary thing you have, you spend from there. Why we need the, so every day there will be a program, then every day we will put another one and another cess. And so the cess and surcharges are very perverse. And I must say it's perverse in the sense that because these are not shared with the state. Cess and surcharges, and the recent, if you see the CAG report, the recent CAG report, they said that whatever we collect from the cesses and surcharges and earmarked for specific purposes are not given to them. Then what is the purpose of this cesses and surcharges? Right? So I am very against of cesses and surcharges.
sir, I just wanted to know the rollout of GST. The government has set a deadline for next year, now April. What kind of preparedness or how much progress do you think we can make by next year, if any?
Right. Basically, there's lots of need for time because instead the procedure for ratification, then GST model bill, then the CGST, IGST bill will be placed into the central parliament, then SGST bill will be passed to the state government, and that it will take some time. But I don't see it will be anyway we can introduce before middle of the next financial year. So it will be around I think September, October is maximum, and at least that time we need to implement the GST. Yeah, I don't think that is a very realistic target. The cost if we could meet the target of introduce the GST. I think September, October will be realistic time.
So would you like to comment on anything else, maybe of the sectors which will gain or lose?
Yeah, the sectoral thing that will gain or lose is that those sectors having a big or large backward linkages. We take example of automobile industry or industry of textile industry or industries like pharmaceutical. They will benefit from the GST. And those industries are vertically integrated. Vertically integrated means all that they do, there will be no incentives for vertical integration, at least as I understand. So vertical integration is not there, so efficiency in manufacturing and distribution will go up, and then they will benefit from that. But there will be some sectors which will bear the most, which are taking much more of services. So, but I want to think that I want to mention one thing: the transport sector, we need to have a comprehensive GST treatment for transport sector. Because the transport sector, if we keep out the transport sector from the GST, the comprehensive GST base, then it will be a huge problem, both for tax compliance and as well as for the transport sector also.
Should we talk about airlines in that, or just
no? The airlines will be under the GST system, whatever the service tax that thing, but they won't get the input tax credit against the ATF purchase. ATF will be purchased, they won't get the input tax credit, but the service tax component, what they pay, they have to be comprehensive GST, so they will get some input tax credit against their local VAT purchases. Oh, their purchases, not local. So.
And so any gainers, major gainers and losers among the states which would adapt faster or gain most, or the states which would
all the consuming
behind.
Here I want to mention one thing, that there is a perception that consuming state and the producing state. If we talk about the manufacturing state will lose and consuming state will gain. And I want to mention one state in perspective, and that is Tamil Nadu. If you see the Tamil Nadu manufacturing share is going down like anything else. So manufacturing share of Tamil Nadu is now 2013-14 is 15%. It has gone down to around 23-24% to now 15%. So 9% has lost the Tamil Nadu. So now the question is, Tamil Nadu is a manufacturing state or consuming state? Because majority of this loss is came through the service sector. Now Tamil Nadu is a hub of service sector, and the service sector is that the service sector is a very, very labor intensive sector, the knowledge intensive sector. The people are there in the Tamil Nadu, they are also consumers. So consumption growth in Tamil Nadu is growing, and the manufacturing sector is not growing at the rate. So the perspective that people are saying that Tamil Nadu is a manufacturing state is basically kind of assumption. I don't accept that assumption.
All right, sir. So I think we will conclude this session.
Thank you very much.
So, Yuan, I think we would just like to conclude the session. We Dr. Mukherjee touched upon a lot of aspects of GST today. I'm not sure if we will come out with an immediate transcript, which was a question asked by somebody, but the video would be provided in a consolidated manner on YouTube after some time, and I think we will inform everybody about the proceedings of today's talk by Dr. Mukherjee. So on behalf of my parliament and the entire group, I would really like to give my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Mukherjee, and hope to continue with the format and have more sessions like this.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.